Hey YouTube, Poobslag here, and this is TurboFat, an open source game I'm developing in the Godot engine. You can find a link to the source code at the GitHub page in the description below. This month I've added a more detailed interior area, so you can see it has a kitchen, some plates and sinks and stoves and stuff like that. But I've also started adding the beginnings of a story with some logic as to when cutscenes can and can't play and things like that. So let's get to it. This is what the indoor area looked like last month. You can see this table is drawn at sort of a 3/4 from the side type view, and same with this pillar behind me. But then the floor is just head-on rectangles, and these don't mix at all. Let me explain the problems I hit. So having a single object drawn in a 3/4 perspective on a rectangle grid works great if it's by itself or just not next to anything else. But I wanted to have stuff like kitchen countertops, which all connected and had sinks and stoves and stuff on them. And I couldn't make these kinds of assets connect to each other. If I put them next to each other on the grid, the surfaces don't line up right. So I either needed to redraw them all with a head-on perspective in mind, or I needed to change the shape of my tile map. I decided to change the shape of my tile map. So I started with this rectangular tile map I already had, and you can see all the lines go up and down, and everything's just rectangles. And to skew it over and make it into parallelograms, I changed this X component of this custom transform field, and that gave everything a little bit of skew, so now I add these cool parallelograms. And after that, I drew some countertops. I drew all these assets that they could connect to each other, and you can see I have a countertop in the scene already. And it supports auto tiling, so I can just draw a new one if I wanted to counter down here. Looks great. The problem that I didn't realize until after I'd done all that work is that these counters are a lot deeper than they are wide. So if I had to draw something like a stove asset, it would look normal from the side, and I could give these like rectangular burners and have room for 4. And then when I went to draw it from the front, it didn't really make sense. It was so narrow, it just didn't look like a stove. So I had to redraw this stuff with a slightly different perspective and change the settings a bit. So I flattened my tiles a bit, and I got these things looking a little more square. But then I ran into this other problem, which is this bottom row table, as you can see, looks pretty normal. But the top row does not overlap right. It looks really crazy. This is a problem with Godot's render order. Tile maps only support a single render order, which is they'll render from top to bottom, and they'll render in a random order unless something gets added or removed or changes, and then that will be rendered last. So it's basically top to bottom, oldest thing to newest thing. Ties are broken randomly. So that wasn't a dead end, and I did think of a workaround, which is this X sort button up at the top. This is not like Y sort where it keeps stuff sorted forever. It's just a function which runs once and does something hilarious. It creates a copy of all of the used cells in the tile map, and it stores those in an array and sorts it from left to right. So now we know this is the thing that it should render first. Then it blinks off that oldest thing. So that oldest thing gets erased from the tile map. We wait for a frame, and then we blink it back on. So then we go to the next one and we blink that off and on. We go to the next one and we blink that off and on. And the result is it does work. So I'm going to click the button. Here it is. You can see it all blinked off, it all blinked on, and now it looks good. I'll just click that once more in case you didn't see it. But the two problems with this are, first of all, this is not a permanent thing. It's not like, oh, the list is sorted forever. We did it. It's going to be in the wrong order again next time they enter the scene, or next time something blinks off and on, or if they decide like to drop a new table or whatever. That's wrong now, and you have to call that function over and over. And the second problem is this is something the player sees. They see everything looks bad, everything blinked, and now it looks okay. But they see this blinking happening, they're just going to think your game is hella glitchy or you don't know what you're doing. So I hated this fix. I had to come up with something better. The better thing I came up with, which has other drawbacks, you'll see, this parallelogram thing, right? Where we saw we could take a tile and say by changing this X component, it's a little bit skewed horizontally. Well, you can do that vertically too. You can give this a little Y component and say now technically this whole row, instead of being horizontal, it's a little tilted by like a hair of a pixel, just a fraction. And that's enough for the renderer to render stuff properly from like left to right. But the problem is now your tiles, you know, if you extend your thing out to like a football field size, this is technically a few pixels lower than the left thing. And, you know, it'll probably result in some physics glitches or some rendering glitches later. It's unfortunate, but it seems like the cleanest thing I can do for now. So with that last hurdle out of the way, I was able to draw a bunch of kitchen assets for things like stoves and the sink, these stacks of plates, and I also dressed up the floors and walls a bit. One caveat, though, is the logic for stitching together these counters is a little complicated. Stuff like the stack of plates with a counter below it can connect to the grills, and the grills actually connect to each other and make a big grill. So the logic for when they connect, when they don't connect, and which tiles to use was pretty complicated, and I had to write it myself. And then there's no way to tell Godot, like, and that's how you auto-tile, use my auto-tiling logic. So I just had to write my own function here to just say auto-tile everything. And it's just a manual button press, and it goes to my custom auto-tiling function, which does something crazy. But yeah, that wasn't so bad. So when I started attaching cutscenes to my levels, I ran into a problem because the levels were by design not 100% linear. You might have to start with level 1, and the game would say, well, you have to beat 2 of these 3 levels to progress. And you might decide, I'll do levels 2A and 2C. 2B is too hard for me, the pieces move too fast. And then you go on to level 3, and then you do level 4, and so on. But if all these levels have cutscenes, sometimes 2B's cutscene just didn't make sense anymore once you got that far in the game. So I decided to write a little expression language so that levels could have a condition attached to them to say, this level has a cutscene, but it should only play if A has happened and B has not happened yet. So I wrote a Boolean expression parser, which will take a string like that, and then create a tree of Boolean expressions, and then it has logic for evaluating those Boolean expressions too. And so here is the code, which, for example, parses like a not expression, and it says if there's the word not in this string, then I will create a not expression, and those kinds of expressions are up here, where they say, oh, a not expression returns true if this expression returns false, if its child expression is false. Okay, so all that stuff was also tested using the Godot unit testing framework, GUT. So I have comprehensive tests showing things like order of operations and parentheses all work just great. Even though I don't have any levels that require stuff that complicated, I know it'll all work when the time comes. So after I got that Boolean expression parser in place, I used it to solve 2 other problems. The first was related to level prioritization. When you talk to someone on the overworld, they always play their oldest unbeaten level, but that didn't always make sense. Like if you had just beaten levels 15 and 16 and were really excited about level 17 and where the story was going, you might talk to someone and they're like, well, let's do level 2 because you haven't beaten level 2 yet. But what about 17, right? So now level 17 can have a priority flag, which says, ooh, if you've just beat level 15 and 16, this level happens next no matter what. So that's nice. And then the other time I used this Boolean expression parser was for dialogue, where now when you talk to a character, you might say, oh, if you've already met these other 2, then they might have something to say about them, or you have a new dialogue option. Yeah. So after I wrote all my very clever cutscene skipping logic, it dawned on me that people who've been playing my game for a while and have already beaten all the levels aren't going to see any of them because the game's going to say, oh, you beat that level already. You don't need to see that cutscene. So I added this cutscene button, which starts off with the default behavior where it'll play all the cutscenes once and then you'll never see them again. But you can flip it to say, just skip all the cutscenes. I don't care. I don't need the story. Or to play all the cutscenes, even if I've technically already seen them before. I want to go back and look again. Yeah, so it's good in the short term because at least people can see what I've been doing, but it's also probably useful for other reasons. So I do a lot of my storyboarding in Google Docs, but when I paste that stuff into the ASCII dialog files that make up my game, I noticed a lot of weird characters like these ellipses and these back quotes that aren't really ASCII, so I wanted to sanitize those, and I started out sanitizing it just myself by hand, but then I realized, well, it's just scripted. I'm going to miss some of these otherwise. So I already had a delint script, which I was using to catch syntax problems in my code that I didn't like spaces at the beginning of the lines and things like that. So I extended that delint script, so now it takes a clean flag when you pass it in. It'll not only catch problems, but it'll fix the ones it can fix. So it obviously fixes the non-ASCII characters in my dialog files, but I went back and also made it so it'll do things like unset the Godot settings I always forget to unset, and delete any temp files that it notices. I've also made some improvements to the camera. It often had problems earlier where the dialog bubbles would cover up characters who were talking, and where it would jerk around often, especially when a conversation was ending, but now it pans over nice and slow, so I think it's a lot smoother. So that's where we're at as of July. I was looking forward to July being the month where I'd finally get to some of the story stuff, and it was. I wrote about 12 cutscenes which are in the game now, more coming. I'd like to, in July, add more cutscenes around characters who are not your employees, so maybe flesh out some of the customers in your rival a bit more. I'd also like to have more dialogue that just happens when you walk up and talk to someone, as opposed to all of it being centered around the level that you're playing. So flesh out the characters a little. I'd like to get that done in July, so I hope you will come and join me and see what kind of problems I inevitably face. See you guys. Thanks for watching.